Good evening, everybody. How's it going?
Doing great.
How you doing?
Good. Here in a little bit, we'll show your little star-crossed bumper. So, right now we are. So this is the second time we've decided to do this little show. This is Christians making comics, and it's a little different of a format from from most of your comic book shows. First off, it's not about Christian comics per se, but it is about Christians that are making the comics. And so tonight, I want to thank everyone that is watching. Please feel free to comment. Let us know that you're here. Let us say hi to you. If you have any questions at all, we do want to be able to answer those questions tonight as well. So we'll try to get to any questions that might pop up. But my guests tonight are some guys from a company called Starcross that I have a bit of a history with, actually. And it's a fun company. The reason why I decided to interview you guys is because you are doing something that not a lot of companies do. You are making comic books that are for the general audience, but you're kind of driven and directed by your faith in doing this, and your Christian worldview kind of comes out in things. And so I want to talk about that a little bit this evening. So if we could, one of you guys has some TV in the background. If you could take care of that,
It's probably
that'd be
me.
awesome. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, that was you. All right, so Starcross Comics. I'm gonna play your little bumper here. Then Joe, I just want you to introduce yourself, tell me a little bit about your company, and then we'll get around to the rest of the guys that are kind of working under that label, right? That's happening, man.
Thanks.
That's pretty exciting stuff, dude. Did you make that?
No, I had it made. I wouldn't have a clue how to make that. I had the idea.
It's like, wouldn't it be cool if it did this? And,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Well, my name's Joe Spicer. So I'm the founder of Starcross Comics, and we've been publishing for about 23 years. Getting better and better, in each incarnation as we've learned more and develop. And, the cross in Starcross was, the Christian cross, and that kind of always, that when you talk about like supernatural or superheroes or all this, I always wanted it to be like a Christian worldview based. It didn't have to be, particularly about that, but it I didn't want it from either, strictly atheistic or evolutionary or, it's just where's the power come from, and we do full blown, Bible focused comics, but then we have our normal Starcross universe characters, which are, different heroes, different villains, and they're not necessarily, preaching while they're fighting or anything like that. So I want to say, like, anyone can pick up these books. Just like if you read Chronicles of Narnia, you might not get the undertone messages. And that's just kind of how we function. We also, don't want anything anti-Christian, but you don't have to be a Christian to be in Starcross. But we're still going to gauge what your content is, that it's something that we approve of or are comfortable with. But I just finished my 68-page graphic novel called Crazy 9. Right now I'm focused on the next chapter of Biblical Proportions, and trying to get out the crossover with Luke and I.
Yeah.
Working on that too.
Well, we got something happening, don't we?
Yep. So I'll turn it over to the rest of the guys.
All right. Let's go just below me. Tin Soldier. He's relentless.
Yeah, so I'm I'm Nicholas Gear. Been making comics for the last 2 years. Like you said, The Relentless Tin Soldiers, my book, and Evan David and I, who were just popped out, have got a book coming up called Kid Fury.
Awesome. Dan, take it away, buddy.
There you go. So my name's Dan. I am a writer. I have a new series hopefully coming out soon, right, Joe?
Yeah.
Called Stained Glass. I'm just a writer. My artistic ability is
Just a
not
writer.
that good.
It always cracks me up when people say, I'm just a writer. There's no such thing as just a anything. If you do anything that is creative, man, that sets you apart from everybody else. I mean, that's, actually doing it.
Dan's book's going to be amazing. It's going to floor everybody. He has such original, interesting characters, and the concept, it'll blow you away. Like, everything he's been doing has been like amazing so far, and it's just getting started. So that's what I'm saying about that. And Kid Fury's looking really good, and Tin Soldier #2 is looking amazing. So those are coming out.
All right, and then we've got Evan David. Evan, introduce yourself.
Hi, I can hear you all now. Did you guys hear me before?
No.
No.
You could not. Yeah, and I couldn't hear any of you guys. Weird. Okay, so yes, I'm Evan David. Nice to meet you. I'm in Starcross Comics, obviously, and I'm the author of the Black Blossom series, which is my longest one, Urg the Battler, Outed, which is kind of like a Superman one, and then I'm also currently writing a comic strip for Adventures in Odyssey. That's not part of Starcross Comics. That's a different thing, but still.
Yeah. So,
you have more. You have more books than that. You have Strange Tales from Eternity.
Yes. And
Waiting, Dating, and Mating.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Waiting, Dating, and Mating.
Yes. That's
like
a
that.
It's actually a really cool comic. You got to check it out.
Yeah. All right. So you guys have been doing comics, kind of it's kind of across the gamut as far as timeline goes. Some of you have been doing it for decades, and some of you for years, or maybe some of you for a year. Maybe, I'm not real sure. Dan, how long have you been at it, Dan?
You know what? I haven't got a book out just yet, but I have been writing my character stories almost 20 years. It finally, if I can just, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just have the story going, and I'd put it away, I'd shelve it, and then God would just give me another part of the story and another part. And after a while, I was like, well, these stories keep coming. I got to do something with it. And so Joe has really been that vehicle where I've been able to find everything I need to get the writer, the artist, and just start really moving on this. So I'm still kind of being born into this.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of people don't understand that it does take a long time to kind of get to that beginning part, because it can be a bit overwhelming, kind of the nuts and bolts of comic creating and those kind of things. But tell me about your experience as far as kind of being a Christian and trying to get into independent comics. Now, let me ask: is your comic like a Christian comic, or is it just kind of general population comic, and you just happen to be a Christian writing it?
Are you to me?
I think it's Dan.
Yeah, Dan.
So while I am a Christian, I been a Christian since I was 4. Went on to be in ministry for some years, and currently I'm a banker.
A banker, nice.
But my comic, Joe, I want to say it without saying it. It's going to have a lot of great Christian things. It is a Christian comic, and I grew up kind of where a lot of the Christian stuff that was given to us was that cheesy flannel graph. Everyone's got the bright shiny smiles and a twinkle in their eye, and everything is just so happy. And it's not always like that. So the main characters, they will really explore the depths of Christianity, as well as the depths of sin and humanity. I want this to be a comic book that it doesn't matter who picks it up, from whatever religion, whatever culture, whatever country. They pick this up and they're like, man, I can see my character. I see me here. But then the gospel is there.
No, let me talk about that for a second, because that could be, that's, that could be a tall order. It could be complicated to do that. And I get a lot of flack because I'm one of those Christians that just makes comic books. I'll draw She-Hulk or whatever. I'm an artist, and people's like, well, how can you be a pastor or be a Christian and do that? It's like, well, how can you be a banker and be a Christian? How can you be a police officer and be a Christian? It's just, it's a job, and you do your job, but you don't do anything in your job that's outside of the realm of your convictions. So one of the things that I get a lot of flack for is because I don't make a Christian comic, and my response has been universal, that I don't care for Christian content because it's flannel graph and it's goofy and it's unrealistic and it's kind of, like you said, it's hokey and it's goofy. So what is it that you're trying to do to make it not that? Like, as a kind of your first time book trying to make this, what are some steps that you're intentionally trying to do to make it to where this book is able to be picked up by people that might be Muslim or agnostic? And
for me, like I said, the story is something I'll just wake up in the middle of the night and it'll just come to me. It's not something I'm just like focusing on, but I'm trying to find the best artist to do my cover, to do my characters, to do my interior work. I want it done with excellence. One thing I noticed through scripture, those that we consider heroes of the faith were not the greatest people. In fact, I think that's maybe one of the reasons why I really see that scripture's true. Most Christian content is lame. Yeah. But you look at these, whether it was the judges of the Old Testament, David, Moses, Abraham, the disciples, you look at these guys that had such moral failures, and yet God used them. It wasn't that they were, again, the Heidi ho neighbor. They were kind of rough. So I'm always going to make sure that I want a comic that my kids can read, but I also want somebody who's reading Image, DC, Marvel, whatever, to be able to pick this up and be like, man, I really like this. This is the content's there, the stories here, the characters are full, and they can stand on their own if they need to. And then while they're doing that, like, the gospel is in there. It is going to be a strong, but again, it's
okay. Let me toss that question out to everybody else too. So we know that for the most part, Christian content is lame. And Evan, especially, you're working on Adventures in Odyssey, which I remember listening to that on the radio, and you either loved it or you hated it. It was one of those things. And so it's that's not typically an IP that people are like, wow, that's a really cool IP. It's like, wow, that's going to be, that's going to be exciting.
I don't know if I've ever met anybody who's hated it.
I knew a few people.
I've met ambivalent people and people who love it. Those are the two categories that I've experienced.
I think my sisters loved it. I was ambivalent to it, but I had a couple friends that were like, turn that off. It's so hokey. It's lame. I don't want anything to do with it. And, I've done a lot of inner city ministry. I do a lot of ministry with people who are not Christians. And so one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of people that create Christian material, like what you said, Dan, you want to have the gospel in it, right? But what we do is we package Christian material, or gospel material, to Christians. And I mean, Christians have already, this is we could do a little theology right here, right? Like, salvation is pass fail. There's no grading in salvation. You're either saved, you're not saved. Joe's not any more saved than I am, and I'm not any more saved or any less saved than what's the guy's name? He did the big crusades, the good ones.
Graham.
Billy Graham. Thank you. Sometimes COVID brain gets me still. So, and I'm not any less saved than Billy Graham, because salvation is pass fail, sins are covered. Now, sanctification, obviously is different from that. That's kind of discipleship, right? But if you're packaging a message of the gospel, which the gospel is for salvation, but it's packaged and marketed to people who are already saved, it can be like, I always ask, I've been asked, what's the point in that? So how do you, number one, keep your Christian worldview stuff not lame? And how do you package the gospel so it actually gets to the people that you want it to get to? That's a good question. Oh, sorry. Someone must be at the front door.
For me, at least with every one of my comics except for Outed has a gospel message in it, and on purpose. And the Black Blossom is probably my best example of what you're talking about, where it straight up presents the gospel, but the characters, pretty much all the characters, are coming in from a place of unbelief, and they are experiencing things that is forcing their hand to have to relook at their worldview. So it's not like, they've come across a preacher and the preacher's like, hey, let me share this with you. Oh my gosh, my life has changed. And sometimes that does happen in real life. But, I feel like it happens a little too often in Christian media. So with this, it's like this person, the person who is telling the Black Blossom that God is real is the villain. And she's like, you're insane and you're nuts and stuff. And then all of a sudden something happens where she is forced to say, all right, I can't explain that. And so I'm going to need to relook at some things. And so that I found was a good way to get to talking about those things in a natural way, even though it's a supernatural thing that happens in the comic book. But I think it's a much more organic way where she's not looking for it. She's not interested in it, but because of what happens, you kind of have to just stop and say, all right, I gotta think about
kind
this.
And that's only until issue 5 that happened.
Yeah, not until issue 5. Yep.
But isn't that really kind of the story of our lives in faith? It, we're not, I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't wanting it, but something happened and it smacked me in the face and I realized I needed it. And I think a true authentic conversion happens that way. Sometimes it's a preacher talking. I remember I was invited to church one morning. Just a note for everyone out there. If someone calls you on a Sunday morning and asks you if you're busy, the answer, unless you want to go to church, is yes. Okay. I made the mistake. There was this guy from our church and he had called and he said, hey, are you doing anything this morning? And I said, no. And he goes, do you mind, would your mom and dad mind if I come took you to church? And I was like, oh, well, let me check. And I asked mom and dad, they were still asleep. They didn't care. They was like, whatever, just go, whatever, probably mom, dad, brother Foster wants to know if I can go to church. They're like, yeah, just go, just whatever. So I remember going to church and I wasn't dressed the way everybody else was dressed. And I didn't particularly care for the music and, their outfits were weird. And the preacher did this weird barky thing. He made God a 2-syllable word. And he was like, God, duh. And, and he would spit a lot and he got really, praise God, hallelujah. Kind of like that. And then he would talk normal like this. And then he'd go into his prayer, dear Lord, And I was like, ooh, that's kind of weird that that's happening. And all of that stuff didn't turn me away, because they were playing an old hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul." And something happened. And I felt like there was this thing that I was missing. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. I didn't know I was missing that. And I didn't know that I needed that. I didn't know I wanted that. But now that it's presented to me, that's all I can think about. And that's what pulled me into church. And that's a very authentic thing that happens. And I'm sure you guys have stories that are very similar. And I like hearing that that's how you're kind of presenting the gospel in what you're doing.
One last thing I want to say about how I'm doing it is I have one whole issue that is just nothing, but it's basically just a Bible track. It's a gospel track that's like taking you through it. But it's the annual. So it's the Black Blossom, and she's going through and she's hearing the actual explanations of these things. But if you don't want to get the annual and you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you're not going to get that. But you're going to see the change from before and after. And if you want to know why that
results of it, okay,
you can pick up the annual to get the nitty gritty.
Well, let me ask, how do you go about making the annual a Bible track that isn't lame and doesn't suck?
Well, I think it's just, I mean, a Bible track is a Bible track. Sitting down and talking about the gospel is sitting down and talking about the gospel. But so I'm doing it, I think, in a very honest way from this girl's perspective, where she's just like exactly what you just said. This is weird. I don't like being here. Sorry, there's my alarm. This is like, feels very culty to me to be in here, but I have to explore this because of what happened to me. And she's asking the hard questions, like, why did Jesus have to come in the first place? Couldn't God just snap his fingers? Stuff like that. Like, so you think everybody's going to hell? I'm not okay with that. Things like that. So she's coming at it from a very, very honest place, and it's not, wave your hands. And she's like, oh, my eyes have been opened. It's rough. It's a rough, honest, awkward conversation.
Evan's really good at taking lame concepts and making them cool. Because I'll say,
I don't know
about that.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not. I don't know.
It is. So he'll.
I don't know if he's saying that you have lame concepts or what.
No, now I just trust. Now I just trust that it's going to be good. But I mean, early on, I was like, I don't know. That seems kind of cheesy. And then I read it and I was like, that was really cool. Or, I don't know, maybe you should go with a different idea. Oh, that was really cool. Okay. So it's like you're kind of thrown off a little and you think, oh, he's gone down the wrong, idea hole. And then you check it out and you're like, I actually like that. That was really cool. So now I just trust what he's going to do is going to be good, even though for a minute you might go, I don't know about that. But that's why I encourage everybody to read his stuff, because it's very surprising.
Well, thank you, Joe. And I think I also have a background like as an actor, so I'm really used to getting into the character's head and saying, okay, not necessarily what do I want to happen for the story, but like how would this character actually react? So I can make the situation, but then when I put the character in, I'm not absolutely sure where the character is going to go and what they're going to say. And so just trying to get in their head and act it out as it's going, I think that helps things be a little more honest and authentic. At least that's my process for doing it. And I've enjoyed the things that have come out of it.
Yeah, the writing is more like, something you'd see on a brand new TV show. Just how the characters are talking, very realistic, not very comic booky necessarily. Almost like an actor or actress would be delivering these lines in a script for a TV show.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about your work and adventures in Odyssey here in a little bit, because that's very Christian. That's like that is very Christian content. And so we'll talk about kind of your approach to that here in a bit. But I want to hear from the author of The Relentless Tin Soldier. So let's a little bit about this whole. Now, is your comic faith-based or is it faith-influenced?
It's more of a general-based comic, so I haven't ran into any real issues as far as my faith, as far as my comic, and what can be in it and what can't be in it. I'd say the biggest wall that I've seen for me personally is what shows I'm willing to go on to promote it. You know, there's some shows that they may get a lot of viewers and a lot of backers and stuff, but I don't exactly agree with all the content on their show. So, you know, sometimes not willing to go on certain shows and stuff.
You know, let's talk about that for just a second, because that is. So I go on a lot of shows. I don't go on to promote a lot. You know, believe it or not, I'm every. You guys know I'm everywhere, but you know, but I don't go on a lot of places to promote. I go in a lot of places to be present.
Yeah.
I look at streaming and going on some of these shows as a mission field, in a sense. You know, it's like, let me be there, build relationship with them. And yeah, you know, there are some shows that they got some. I've been on a couple, and man, my internet went out. You know, where I'm like, oh, sorry, you know, oh, I'm sorry, my internet went out. They're just, the content was just way over the edge for me, you know, but I'm probably more likely to go on some of these more questionable shows than other people, because, you know, but that's the kind of ministry that I do on the streets. I go to the places where people have guns and drugs, and, you know, I go to the not so savory places. So, you know, why not use the internet the same way? Kind of go to these places and try to build relationships with the people, and have that opportunity. But there is a line that we have to draw eventually, because, you know, it's like, well, because our brand is involved with this, and it's not just our brand, it's who we represent. It's his brand as well. So how do we balance that? Go ahead and talk a little bit more about how you choose which kind of shows and which ways to promote, because primarily you're selling your book. But
yeah, so I'm just pretty selective about, you know, what channels I'll go on. You know, I'll get requests from certain people to come on to promote my book, and I'll always go watch your channel before I agree to it and make sure that it's something I'm going to be comfortable on. You know, I don't want to sit there cringing the whole time I'm trying to promote my book. So I'd rather feel comfortable and maybe get a few less sales than go on a show that I'm not comfortable with and get more sales.
All right. How about you, Joe? What's your kind of
for shows? I totally know what you're talking about. I mean, some shows are like really X-rated where it's just, and I've been on some where you don't know at first. You know, Nick says he checks it out first. I might just go, oh yeah, I've heard of those guys, and then you go on, and it's just like, you know, and then you're like, then you deliver what you have to say, and you're like nowhere in the rating that they're using on their show, and then you kind of want to go, okay, I want to go now.
Yeah,
like it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and you're like, oh, it's getting late. I gotta go. Yeah,
I've actually checked out shows.
That's when you use.
Hey, that wasn't too bad, but yeah, my internet.
That's when you use Evan's Heart Out at 9.
Yeah.
Right.
But the, you know, I've been on, like, I've watched shows. I'm like, oh well, yeah, that's not too bad. It's a little racy, but it's not too bad. And the night I'm on, it just happens to be a really rough night. Like I was on one night with a guy that had a devil book on, you know, on a show, and it's like, why didn't you book me with that guy?
Maybe they did that on purpose. The contrast.
They did it on purpose. But they didn't tell me. But I took it as an opportunity to, you know, to let the light shine through me. You know, it's like, you know, I'm like I kind of feel like the prophets of old. You know, like when there's like, you know, compare the you know the gods of those people compared to my God. It's like, well, my God calls down fire. You know, I'm not worried about that. Yeah, my God stands toe to toe with anybody and wins. I'm like, he's amazing. I'm weak. I'm a nobody, but he is everything, you know. And so, you know, kind of have that. But talk more, like Dan, tell us about how you, you know, especially, you know, trying to make a new book and a lot of promotion.
So
are there anything
like for this, like I had a question, do I really want to be on Luke Stone show. You know, and I watched I watched a couple shows, and I was like, okay, do I? And even then, I reached out to you, and I wanted to find out a little bit about you, like what makes you tick. My comic really, I will say this, it does deal with the spiritual warfare at a superhero level. That I can say that it deals with it. So for that, I mean, even when I pray about what I'm writing, I pray about who I'm talking to, I pray about my characters. Because of the spiritual warfare that's involved in the comics, I've reached out to my pastors and said, hey, can you pray over what I'm about to do? Because I'm researching like deities and demons and witchcraft and all different things. And so like I'm having to research all that before I ever put any words down on paper and pray over it. My wife, she's a prayer warrior. She prays over it. So like even this meeting I got that we're doing right now, like it's been prayed over. So, you know, I mean, if I'm on a show and somebody's going to be like, hey, well, you know what, we're promoting this new, you know, again, I'm not here to bash anybody. I think Christianity, that's kind of the bad rap that we've gotten by smashing other religions. I mean, we know the hope that we have in Christ, and we know that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father but through him. We understand that, but I'm still not going to combat somebody. I'm not going to come on there to just say, okay, we got this Christian on here, and now we got this other person, and let's put them head to head. Be like, you know what, man? I love you anyways, and, you know, I hope you do well. I probably won't be reading your comic, but you know what? Like, you read mine, I mean, it's not going to bash you, but you're going to learn something.
Nice. Okay. I know Joe has a...
Well,
yeah, his,
I got something to say.
No, the way he goes on shows, he's just like, I don't know. Am I up?
Right?
Yeah.
No, I was going to take it down the road of like conventions.
Okay.
Because that's where you interact with other people, and you know, when you have, let's say, an obvious Christian book. Like I remember when I first put out The Way of the Cross, which was a Jesus-centered comic that somebody else actually wrote, but I was the artist, and then we published it through Starcross. That, I mean, it has Jesus on the cover, so it's really obvious. And I remember at the time when that was a new book of mine, I had that out, and I would have people that would, like, let's say two friends are walking by the table, and they would be like, point at that and like laugh and be like, not that it didn't look cool, because it does look cool. It's up there.
Yeah.
But just because it was Jesus on the cover, so they had to be mocking and stuff like that. Or other people would pick it up and I'm like, oh, they like it, and then they'd go, oh, is this about Jesus? I go, yeah. And then they'd be like, oh, like, what did you like? I think they're so used to it being like, oh, it's gonna be like
a satire or something.
A satire, like some of those books that came out controversially, and you know, like that. But then I would get Christians that came up and were like, oh wow, this is great, I'm gonna get this just because I'm a Christian, and this is really cool. So but like you say, preaching to the choir, my favorite thing was somebody who just wanted it, maybe because they're kind of Christian, and you know, maybe they are curious to check it out. Like that's more interesting for those people to want the book. And that's who I want to get all our books anyways. I want Christians, non-Christians, atheists, everybody to be getting all our books, and not saying, oh, this is a Christian book, it's not for me, I can't read this book.
Yeah, you know, but truthfully, I think we all are there. That's what we want, but not all those people are going to pick up our book, especially depending on the cover. I mean, if you got a cross on the cover, it's going to limit that right away. But I find for me, and maybe you guys can speak to this a little bit as well, that see, people fell in love with Jesus and followed Jesus because they got to know Jesus. They heard him speak. They saw how he loved people. They saw how he interacted with people that were different than him. And when you read the scripture, he's not the hacky sack Jesus that people say that he is. He was offensive. He said, "I've come to separate, not to cause unity like you think. I've come that daughter will be against mother and father against son." And he's because he knew that choosing him and living and walking the way that he did would make you set apart. And it's that set apartness that is sometimes rejected, right? But I see a lot of Christians or people in comics that claim to be Christian. I'm going to say it that way, okay? Which it's not semantics that I'm playing. I believe Jesus is the word. Words are important, okay? So there are a lot of people in comics that claim the Christian moniker, but yet the fruit of their life isn't there. And what they do is they wind up getting in a lot of internet fights, and they say things and do things that are kind of contrary to what our faith really is. There's one thing to uphold what Scripture says and not bend on what is true or not. It's another thing to use our faith to be a jerk to people and to attack people. Use it as an opportunity for you to tell them why you don't like them or why they're stupid. It's unfortunate that happens way too often. But I find that the best way to show people the way is not necessarily always through the books that we make or what we write, but it's with the interactions that we have with them. And Joe, you said that you like to go to the conventions because you like to have an interaction with people. Now, I've gone to conventions and I've been tabled next to content that I should have never been tabled next to. Sometimes it's so bad I have to ask, please, can you move? It's just inappropriate that I'm tabled next to this. But I found that I have to have somebody there to watch my table, because when they find out that I'm a pastor, and they normally the first day they find out I'm a pastor, and we just talk about everything else. And during that first day, I somehow gain their trust. And usually the second, third day of a convention, I'm off in a corner somewhere doing ministry while my wife or whoever's with me is running the table. I find that is where the real ministry in my art takes place. Have you can you guys speak to an experience like that, or have you had a similar experience, or do you find that your ministry lies mostly within the pages that you write?
For me, I'm a very introverted person, and I've tried busting out of my shell to be like an extroverted evangelist, and it's just made me miserable. So this writing the gospel message and putting it out in this way and through my writing, that's just brought me a lot more peace and joy. But it's also, I think, just the way God's gifted me to be a part of the Great Commission. And so that recently, that's been my main outlet for ministry is trying. Everything that I do creatively is designed to bring people closer to Christ or to show people Christ. But as far as talking to people about it, that's a rare occurrence for me. So
Evan and I did a convention in his old residence, and we did really well there. And he had a couple cases full of it was the whole Bible, but it was yeah, and but it was how many pages?
24
pages, and a church had paid for them, so we had a whole bunch of extra stock. So we were just giving those out for free. So, I mean, he was like, "Hey, those are free. It's the whole Bible in one comic," and blah blah blah. So that was a simple way, you know, that we're trying to get people to, you know,
Yeah.
read the Bible.
And I think we got a good portion of
Yeah.
the people who took them were not Christians or
Oh
believers
yeah,
in any.
but it was cool
the
art,
was
and it
cool.
was like, yeah.
Mhm.
Mr. Gear, your comic again is just general audience. It's a superhero book.
Yep.
A cool looking book, by the way. And
Appreciate it.
and so, you know, so yours probably your opportunities are going to be different than those of your contemporaries here.
Yeah, I
How
haven't been
about
making
you?
content or anything yet, and I'm still pretty new to the whole making comic books. So I haven't, you know, done the cons. You know, my book's not faith based. It's so I haven't had a lot of issues or anything like that. So
You know, like I said, like with Starcross in general, I liken it to. Do you remember Marvel used to publish Bible stories?
Yeah, I do.
yeah,
They did. Was
Which
it
is a good-
called The Greatest Story Ever Told or something like
Yeah,
that?
something like that.
Right?
Mhm.
Right? And they would do. I mean, you could probably find dozens of them, right? And it was just
Marvel
normal.
actually,
Yeah.
they actually partnered with a Christian based book company and released some books for a while. I can't remember what it's called, but I've got a couple of them.
Mm-hmm. Those were the older ones, like 80s, right?
Yeah,
80s,
90s, I think.
90s.
Let me look.
Yeah, I've got one. It was by Glenn Herdling called The Illuminator. And
That's probably
yeah,
the one
that's
I'm
it.
thinking of.
he's got like a motorcycle jacket and a motorcycle helmet, and he's like flying, and you know, it's all like light behind him, and he's fighting some demon possessed gangbanger, and I mean it's Marvel. And I actually that's how I got started. I reached out to Glenn Herdling and I was like, hey, I got some ideas and you made it to Marvel. Tell me what you did. How do I get what I have? And he got me in touch with what was it, maybe Buddy Scalera, the comic book school, and got me in touch with some other people, and I'll tell you, like, but it was Glenn Herdling with the Illuminator.
The Illuminator. Yeah.
You know, with so nobody was going around saying, "Oh, Marvel, they're these big Christians doing these Christian comics." You know, I liken a Christian comic company. They only do Bible stories or Christian themed stories. That would be a Christian comic company. We are a comic company that makes comics, and just like, oh, look at this.
I've got
There
that.
it is.
Yes.
The Illuminator.
Oh, so good.
I don't remember who it was they partnered with.
I can't believe you found that. But
Nelson.
you know, oh, Nelson.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, just as a comic company could have westerns, sci-fi, humor-based, you know, cartoony comics, and then educational comics, and then faith-based comics, you know, so we can have all of those. But just when you do a Christian book, then you're automatically a Christian company, you know? It's funny.
Yeah, if you happen to do one. Obviously Marvel is not a Christian company. And you know, it's, you know, we think it's cool when a non-Christian company will do some Christian content. You know, people went nuts with Snoop Dogg's gospel album that he produced or whatever. You know, I'm like he just realizes Christians got some
Kanye?
money. No,
Yeah,
Kanye did
Kanye.
that too, but Snoop Dogg produced
Oh no, I didn't know
the
Snoop
gospel
Dogg's.
album.
Oh,
Yes,
no, I didn't
Yeah.
know that one. I didn't know that one.
he
And
didn't
it seems
do it, but he produced it.
it seems like the way the mainstream is now, there's no way Marvel would ever release this book now.
Right.
Oh
It's just-
no, absolutely not now.
No.
But you know, I mean, that's another thing. Like if you come out and you share your faith at all, you know, like immediately, because people, when they found out I was a pastor, the thing that I had to deal with the most, people's like, oh, well, you got a Christian comic book, well, it's called, Hybrids of Sons of Gods. And I'm like, yeah, gods like the Greek gods, because it's the Nephilim, and I had to explain to them that, yeah, a Bible verse started the story, but it's sci-fi like all the way. Now, that's where Joe and I connected, because we both have a Nephilim creature characters in our books. And one of the things that I did, I tried to do what Evan did, was there's a character who's an atheist, but it turns out that he's a Nephilim, part Nephilim. And so if he's part Nephilim, that means angels are real, which means if angels are real, God is real, right? So he's got to try to reconcile this, like he's kind of forced to reconcile, this idea of faith. And but what I've learned, and maybe you guys can speak to this a little bit as well. One of my experiences is that I see a lot of people that are Christians. Now, there's this whole set apartness that we are all about. Like it's very clear that we're supposed to be set apart. But I think some people take that to the point to where it's segregate. They segregate themselves. They say we're in the world, but not of the world. They kind of forget that bit of it, that set apartness, that we're in it, we're just not of it. And what they do is they segregate themselves from the lost, so they can never influence the lost. And I like what Starcross does, that it incorporates your faith and your worldview with entertainment, that the two kind of are blended to the point to where you can have a broader audience. How do you, as Christian creators, people that make comics, Christians making comics, how do you stay set apart without segregating yourself away from people that need to know you?
Just like I think you said it best, where you said that you don't want to make necessarily a comic for Christians, where they're already Christians. So now you're going to be talking to them specifically. You want to make a content that would be for everyone. And then the underlying theme of the moral of the story, or the direction that it's heading, is a biblical worldview. Because if you hit them over the head, they're going to say, oh, this is a club that I don't belong to, so this book is not for me. So it's like, you don't want to do that necessarily.
For me, it's just being in those online communities that are talking about comic books or indie comics or whatever I'm interested in. And if something comes up where it's like, okay, well, I have a chance here to talk about what the Bible says about this, or my belief as a Christian, I'm able, a lot of times I stun people, because when people know that I'm a Christian, they start trying to pick fights, and I don't let them pick any fights. Like, they keep trying to do it, and I'm like, nah, man, Jesus loves you. And it's or I don't actually say that, but it's like, that's the attitude, and I've had conversations with like full on, completely super left lesbian people, whatever. And they're just like, wow, I've never met a person like you. I've never talked with a Christian like this before. And I've never heard these things before. And that's been really, really cool. And again, that's all God. He's given me the words to say in that moment. But I like to do this. I've tried to do the same thing with my books. Try to come at it from a place of understanding. Like, I don't know, God's just giving me a heart to try to understand how the other person is seeing things and feeling things. Because so often when we are insulated as Christians, it can just be like, well, I know the truth, and so therefore I need to tell the truth without any regard for how the person is going to receive the truth. And I mean, you look at Jesus, you look at Paul, you look at Peter, they changed their preaching style and their messaging style depending on who they were talking to, depending on who their audience was. They read the room and were able to adjust their methodology. And that's something that, I don't know, God just put that on my heart, and that's how I want to reach people, is reach them where they're at in a way that they can
the message never changed, but the methods did. You know,
correct.
I see a lot of people these days, especially with the culture that we're in. It's so tempting to go woke, if you will, to go woke and to ignore the parts of the gospel that make people upset. And I think that the part of the gospel that makes people most upset is that they have to come face to face and confront the fact that they are sinful, and that their sin makes them unavailable for eternity with God. But that's the whole point of the gospel, that your sin breaks you, but Christ's love redeems you. And it's, but it's unpopular to label sin a sin these days, and it's unpopular to point that out. And when that is brought up, or scripture's brought up, it's, well, you're just being unloving. When in fact, really the most loving thing that we can do is to say, which is what Christ did for us. He says they hated me because before they knew me, they didn't know they were sinners. But I came and I shed a light on that. Of course, this is the LPV, the Luke's paraphrase version. And he goes, I shed a light on them. And so their sin was known to them. And that's why they killed me. If they killed me, what are they going to do to you? And so that can be very complicated to live that out inside of this very
I think Evan's got to go.
world.
Do you want to?
I do. I've got 5 minutes left.
Do you want to touch
one
on
more thing I want to say?
Adventures in Odyssey? Okay.
I want to say one more thing about this topic. One thing that I found that really takes people aback when I'm sharing the gospel is when you talk about sin, and they're like, "Oh, you think going to hell, or I'm sinful," and just saying like, "Look, I'm not better than you. Like, no one is. Yeah, I'm in the same boat without Jesus. We're the exact same amount of bad.
It's like we're all screwed."
Yeah. So yeah, that's always something I find that like people are like, "Oh, okay, I've never heard that one."
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, what would you like to know about Adventures in Odyssey before I got to go in 5 minutes?
Yeah, quick. Just a couple of minutes. So how are you taking this kind of old school IP and freshening it up for a new generation?
So I am only in charge of the comic strip. If you've listened to Adventures in Odyssey in the past 20 or so years, I think you're going to have a hard time labeling it as hokey. I feel like it's barely even preachy. They do a great job of presenting principles from the Bible and the gospel and moral life lessons in a very natural way, just through the adventures and the life experiences of these characters. I will say that yes, when it started in 1987 and probably through like the mid 90s, you could say hokey. That could easily fit. But like I said, like from 98, probably even before that onward, it's world-class entertainment. It could stand up with any other kids show, except for it's only audio. So, but with the comic strip, it's really cool because we have the ability to bring back characters that can no longer be in the audio show because the voice actors have passed away or something like that. And so we're able to bring back these fan favorite characters. And the goal is to bring in people who have been fans of the show, reconnect them if they've fallen off of the show, or just point out, use the comics to do the same thing the audio is doing, which is point out the truth of God's word. Adventures in Odyssey is created for Christian parents to play for their children, basically. That's the demographic we're looking at, is 8 to 12 year olds. And so it is played for non-Christians, but they're mostly like, kid non-Christians. The stories of people coming to Christ through this have been, there's just numerous, because people, kids are listening to it as they go to bed, and then all of a sudden they come out of their room like, Mom, Dad, I think I need Jesus because I'm a sinner. And they're like, what in the world? And it's
awesome
been really,
that they would do that.
yeah. I mean, there's one story where this guy was a trucker, and he drives across the country, and so he plays Odyssey to listen to it. He's as he's going, he was an atheist, and he really identified with the character of Eugene, who was also an atheist. But then Eugene came to Christ, and as soon as Eugene came to Christ in the show, the guy pulled over his truck and said, "If it's good enough for Eugene, it's good enough for me." And he prayed.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, and I see you, Joe, laughing when I'm talking about this, that an adult man is listening to this stuff. I'm telling you, it is world-class quality, and you need to listen to it and give it a chance, because it's not.
So I didn't even know what it was when Evan got the job.
I know,
didn't
and
know
then
what
I
it was.
questioned Joe's salvation because he's never heard of Adventures in Odyssey, and so
My wife heard of it. She used to listen to it.
Hey, I've got an 11-year-old named Chloe who's listening, a 9-year-old Corbin, a 4-year-old Cambry, and you know what? We go on trips. We're playing Adventure in Odyssey, and we'll play it through, and they'll listen to it, and it's a great story. I gotta say, I've listened to hours and hours of Adventures in Odyssey, traveling across the country.
I did listen to it when I was. I did listen to it a little bit in the early 2000s when I was driving around with my kid in the car, and I caught myself getting into a couple of stories every once in a while, but you
gotta send some links to Nick to give to his daughter.
the artist that you've got working on this is Brian Dawson, who we've all worked with. He does layouts for me. He actually draws a couple of my books for me, and so that guy is a busy dude. He's a workhorse. But
he's busy because of these people.
Yeah, I know the art's going to be good. I know the art's going to be good.
As we are talking about this, he just sent me new panels. As we're talking.
Yeah. So
how
I know that you got to go.
How often are these comic strips coming out? Or they're not out yet? But they're not out yet.
Yes, they have started to come out. So there's one strip per month that's free to the general public, and then there's if you want the weekly content, you have to subscribe to be a Odyssey Club member, which also gives you access to 950 audio episodes.
Can you send me a link to the free one so I can see it?
Yeah, I sure will.
Okay, so
I looked around the site, I couldn't find it. I didn't.
Okay.
No,
all right. So I normally try. I know you've got to go. I'm going to try to keep this thing to an hour for most people that are listening. I feel like we've covered quite a bit. A good conversation. I want to thank you guys for being here tonight and for being a part of this. What I'm going to do now is we'll go around and we'll start with Evan so that he can bow out first. But I just want you I'm going to throw a little Miracle Grow on your screen. Tell the folks where they can find you in any last kind of any parting words.
Okay, hi guys. So you can find me at evandavidproductions.com, and that has links to everything I've published. So you can take a look at that. All the comics are there, some other podcasting stuff I do. And then if you would like to look at the Odyssey comic stuff, just go to adventuresinodyssey.com, and there should be like a big banner on there that has Brian Dawson's artwork of the main character, Mr. Whitaker. You can click on that, and it'll take you to where the comic books are. So thank you guys for having me. Last words, keep living the dream, and I don't know. God has been good to me, and I'm trying to share what He has taught me and share with me from His Word with everybody else. So I'd love for you to read the books and experience that. So thank you again for having me, and great talking to you guys.
So I'm Nicholas Gear. You can find me on Twitter just at my name. The Relentless Tin Soldier has its own Facebook page and on Starcross Comics website.
All right. Very good.
Hey, I'm Dan Stevens, writer for Stained Glass Comics. Be looking for my stuff out soon. I'm going to have some merchandise on StarCrossComics.com. Some merchandise and some fun stuff. If I can just leave one word, just the adventure of faith is the stuff that comic books are made of. So you just keep pursuing that and see what God does.
Awesome.
Hey, this is Joe Spicer for Starcross Comics. Thank you, Luke. Check out our website, starcrosscomics.com. You can check out some of our upcoming Kickstarters and Indiegogos. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and thanks for having us, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Again, thanks everybody for being here. I'm
Appreciate
building
it.
right now the nerdword.org website. It's going to be where the love for nerd culture and growing faith intersect. So it's going to have a lot of the plan is to have regular articles up there that kind of share faith and different devotionals, and then to do weekly little sermonette things, weekly, kind of just inspirational messages, and then obviously to have things like this. And so I do appreciate you guys for being here.
Let me know so I can share it.
Absolutely, yeah. I
Or
hope to
even
have
put it in ads in our books or anything.
Yeah, I hope to have things moving with that by September. And so we've got nerdword.org already, and you can email me at pastorluke@nerdword.org already. So we've got all that set up, just trying to get all that built. Thank you for being here tonight. If you're watching the YouTube, please like and subscribe, share it out. And I do a lot of nerd stuff, and we do Nerd Bacon and Nerd Cap and all that kind of stuff in Nerd Word. So nerd is the theme, and kind of depends on the day and the time on what the other aspect of it's going to be. So it's always fun. Definitely check out lukestonestudios.com, join the mailing list, and we'll keep you up to date on all of that good stuff. So thanks again for being here. We do appreciate all of you, and try to build up more than you tear down, and by all means try to leave the woodpile a little bit higher than you found it.